This is episode 39 of the We Talked About This podcast, and today we have Mike and Paul. Gentlemen, it's been a while since the three of us were on an episode together. Welcome.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Paul.
glad to have us all here. This is great.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
We've got a full agenda today. I don't know if we're going to get through it all, so I'm just going to talk about or mention or state what we're going to talk about today. And Paul, you brought a topic in today called Overzealous Parents in Sports, if I'm describing that correctly.
Yeah, I think that hits the nail on the head there.
All right. And then childhood idols. And this one came from a friend, new listener, Andrew, who listened to our show and was kind enough to send a couple of topic requests. So he wanted to hear us talk a little bit about childhood idols and, you know, did you have any, and did you meet them actually was the crux of that is, have you ever met one of your childhood idols? And, you know, did that meet expectations or was it disappointing? So we're going to share a little bit about that. Then we're going to talk about what we're watching. And if we have time, we'll finish up with some strange news.
Sounds good.
So Paul, I'm going to hand it over to you. Overzealous parents in sports. Why this topic? Where did it come from? And what do you want to tackle around this subject?
Yeah, thanks. I thought this was an intriguing topic to tackle. And the reason that prompted me to bring this up was because of it was a biography that I watched recently about Tiger Woods. And I suppose it's appropriate that we're talking about Tiger Woods because today is Masters Sunday, biggest golf tournament of the year. Tiger Woods, as we know, is not playing this year because of injury suffered in his car accident. But Tiger Woods, he's a really interesting guy. And where I'm going with this was that the documentary talked a lot about his early life. And for those who haven't heard of the name of Earl Woods was Tiger's father. And he was the man very much responsible for, I guess, creating Tiger, the man who we know today is the fierce competitor in the world of golf. And the documentary, it portrayed him in a not so flattering light in terms of the means in which he directed Tiger into the game of golf. And I suppose let's talk about Tiger. We'll talk a little bit about Earl Woods first, and then that can sort of lead into the bigger discussion as to overzealous sports parents. But the reason I wanted to talk about Earl Woods was because here's a guy that had his child playing golf before he was the age of 2 years old. And Tiger's life, he was so immersed in the game of golf that he never really had the experience of being able to enjoy his childhood. Or at least that's what the documentary sort of portrayed.
So wait, so did they actually say that where he didn't get a childhood, or do we interpret that from what you saw?
Well, they had a lot of interviews, and it was a pretty in-depth analysis. So who's to say in terms of how much truth?
Interviews with who, Paul?
Various family friends,
I see, okay.
People that had been connected, that had known Tiger personally throughout his childhood, people that had observed this firsthand. So assuming that at least most or all of this documentary may or may not be true, let's sort of go on the premise that it could be. We're still talking about a father that pretty much predetermined his son's destiny from the age of like 5 years old. I think there's video footage of Tiger as 3 years old, meeting with Bob Hope in some kind of a charity golf classic or something like that. And it was pretty much said at the time that here's a 3-year-old kid who's destined to make the PGA Tour. That's a lot of pressure to put on a kid. So in this example, you have Tiger Woods, who was predetermined that he was going to be a professional golfer to the point where, you know, I guess it was saying that he didn't really have a childhood. He was forbidden from playing other sports because that would take his focus away from golf. It was a very strict upbringing in the sense that he didn't really have a lot of friends. He didn't have a very active social life because golf was such a dominating part of his life.
This is when he got older, I assume, like maybe into his adolescence, or you mean even like as a
even as a kid. It implies that even when he was 6-7 years old, that he was expected to practice golf a couple of hours a day when he would come home from school, type of thing. So this kind of begs a lot of different questions here. So at first glance, one would think that this would be wrong in the sense that parents forcing kids into sports, almost in a fanatical sense, in that we've certainly heard about parents that lecture and criticize their kids. All of us, we're from Canada, where hockey is a huge sport. We've probably seen that firsthand, where there's a lot of Canadian hockey parents that are pretty fanatical about how much their kids should be dedicating to the sport. But it also got me to thinking that if there wasn't someone like an Earl Woods, would Tiger Woods have been the person that he was? In the sense that, as a sports fan, I've enjoyed watching Tiger Woods. I think he's done a lot of great things, and he's been great for the game of golf. If Earl Woods wasn't in the background, would Tiger Woods have been anywhere close to the man that he was?
You don't know.
Right.
You don't know.
That's a great question. And here's what I'm thinking about this. Okay, so number one, you mentioned predetermined. So when you say predetermined, you mean his dad determined this based on what he was seeing already in his child's development? Yeah. Or did he just say, I don't know what this kid has, but I'm going to make him into a golfer?
Well, there's no doubt that he had a natural talent, and that was
at 2 years old. How would you know a kid had a natural talent at golf?
Yeah, exactly. Like he obviously had a keen interest in the game.
At 2?
Yeah. And apparently, as I said, at 3 years old, he was swinging a golf club probably better than most adults.
But was he copying his father is the point. Like you put a kid in a room at 2 years old and your dad is a fishmonger and the kid's not going to like search for, like, how many kids are going to go looking for a golf club and pick it up? They're going to pick up a fish and pretend like to be like that, probably, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm thinking there was some rub off there purposely.
For sure. Kids are going to copy what their parents are interested in.
That doesn't mean that their personality it's still their own. They can say they respond to it or they don't. So obviously he responded to it. But I think he was I don't know.
Responded.
I'm just assuming. Yeah.
No, for sure. He responded to the game of golf. But the fact that pretty much at the age of 3-4 years old, already there was an inclination that, hey, this kid's going to be playing in the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
And to have that hovering over your head for pretty much your entire life.
Okay, so to bring this back a little bit towards overzealous parents in sports, is there a personal angle here which you want to sort of use him to set up, or are we going to talk about famous parents?
Well, the personal angle on this is that I've seen it firsthand amongst my own friends and even within my own family.
Starting that young?
Maybe not quite so young, but I can certainly see at a fairly young age the pressures and the expectations that parents put on their kids, that you need to succeed in this game, that I'm signing you up for hockey or whatever it might be, and this is, you don't really have a choice in the matter.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that, okay, well, the kids like the sport, but I think it's more, in many cases, it's parents that are living vicariously through their kids. Yeah, I think the parents sometimes want it more than the kids do.
I think, so one of the things I want to go back to that you said was, would Tiger Woods be who he is today if it had not been for this overzealous approach to how his father seized his life and says, you are going to be a golfer, and did everything in his power to get him golfing as much as possible, teaching him the game? Would Tiger Woods be around today as a world famous golfer had it not been for Earl Woods? Without I don't know. Like, well, Wayne Gretzky's father as another example of a an involved parent.
Who also recently just passed.
He did. He did. Hockey's dad, right?
Yes.
Or whatever they called him. Or Canada's hockey dad. And the question, I looked up, tried to find information on Walter Gretzky to see if he was known to be an overzealous father as far as Wayne is concerned. Because I'd argue that Wayne is just as good at hockey as Tiger is at golf.
Yeah.
If not, I'd put him higher, to be honest. But nothing in the material I could find suggested he was overzealous or pounded into Wayne. You've got to practice. This is your life. He provided him with guidance. He built a rink in his backyard. He was dedicated to him, but I didn't see anything about overzealous.
Yeah.
And Wayne Gretzky became Wayne Gretzky.
How many people could become the top of the top of the top if they have no personal interest in something? Because I think to some extent we're arguing whether or not the parent is shaping and molding the child, whether or not they want it or not. If a child literally does have no interest in something, I don't think that they could pursue something to the point of being the best in the world. I don't think they would reach that. Otherwise, all of China would just take over everything because they're driven in, I'm talking communist China, where kids are, or North Korea, they're driven like this. You don't have a choice. This is being selected for you, and you will. No, they achieve great results, but it's still the odd person who becomes the super pinnacle of that bunch, right? So
yeah, to your point, Mike, there's always going to be cream that rises to the top, in that there's going to be people that have incredible talent that are going to be professional athletes or whatever it is, whatever field that they're in. I think the problem here is that there's a lot of overzealous parents that push their kids into thinking that one day you're going to play in the NHL, but their kids are really not that good. There's so much competition to be able to reach a point where you're a professional athlete, but there's a lot of parents out there that think that their kids are going to be professional athletes, and putting that pressure and the criticism and, parents lecturing kids after a game. Oh, you played like
feeding
garbage,
them
that type of thing.
Foods. There was a documentary on Netflix about this that they had like the kids were eating protein shakes at 9 years old and trying to get their, to build their muscle. But that's a good point. Well, there's a few things. I mean, there's the whole living vicariously through aspect of this, a father who never really made it. And let's just talk about personal experience for 1 sec.
Yeah.
My father was very supportive of me in my baseball interests, but never was a pushy father. He was never dragging me out to the ball field, making me play. I wanted to play. I was dragging him to the ball field. I was dragging anybody that would come to the ball field. I would do it in the sun, blazing heat, anytime, but I loved the sport.
Right.
Would I have become a Major League Baseball player had my dad been a nutso, crazo, overzealous parent who got me to do what? Be out there even more? I don't think so. No, I think that's why I'm saying it has to be in the person to want. There are exceptions, though. If you look at this, look at the things that we require children to do that they don't, or in my opinion, they shouldn't have a choice at to a certain degree. Children shouldn't have a choice of whether or not they go for schooling. This isn't whether they want or don't want. They're forced to do this. They are forced to act like reasonable people, hopefully, getting up, living their life, keeping rooms clean, this types of things. And to the degree they're not forced, well, the results are apparent in some people's lives, other people's not. So the degree to which parents force or don't force, I'm removing the parental and saying, in anybody's life, there are some things that are forced on us. We have to go to school, and you have to abide by the laws of society. You can choose not to do those things, but there's repercussions. But some people want and some people don't want. What I'm getting to is that just the fact that we're forced to go to school does not make you a good student. It still has to be something that you choose to do, and won't always be something that you want to do. You can be a good student regardless because you are forced to add more time, sit at home, do your math, focus, that kind of thing. So
It's a complex answer. There is, and especially since the group that we're statistically comparing it against is like, Tiger Woods and who else? Like, it's not that we can say, well, here's the 25,000 people that are the number one best golfer to compare against and how their lives, it's like one person. How do you compare someone against them? I guess other great golfers and what their lives are. I don't have that information personally.
Yeah, in the cases of like Tiger Woods and Wayne Gretzky, they're the exceptions to the rule. They're the exceptional athletes that are, generational athletes, I suppose you would say. The problem here is that the parents that think...
What rule exactly, Paul? The exceptions to what rule?
In terms of being exceptional people that are going to...
Maybe not.
Have the talent and the drive to succeed, probably no matter what.
I agree there, but whether or not they're exceptional in person.
Yeah, the problem is the other 99% of athletes who are talented, but perhaps borderline as to whether or not they would even have a consideration to be a professional athlete. It's in that world where there's a lot of gray areas, where there's the overzealous parents that think that their kid's going to play in the NHL one day, but really the kid is going to be burnt out by the time he's 14 and end up hating the game because of the pressures that they're put under.
Well, it's not the pressure though, Paul. That's where I think to be clear, my point is not the pressure. If you want to do it, the stress or pressure it's all relative. It's something that enriches you. If you do not like something, that's where that becomes an issue.
But some kids may not have a choice. They may do it because they don't want to disappoint their parents, or it's because it's expected of them.
Yeah, and then
that's why a lot of kids get burnt out, because once they reach that age where they just don't want to do it anymore. Agreed. Where they finally are old enough to say no to their parents.
Agreed.
So I agree. This is a very, very complex scenario here.
Now, you guys have children. I don't. So your children are in sports? And to some degree, any organized sports? Do you see other parents, and what's your overall sense of it when you're watching them in arenas and things like that?
Yeah, well, I can speak to that. So I will admit, as a father, before my son was out of the womb, I had dreams he would be a hockey player or a baseball player, and clearly, as time went on, I think that is not going to be possible.
So you knew he was a son before he was out of the womb? Just
well, we did actually.
Okay,
but,
I'm just clarifying. Like I was like, well, you were even predetermining his sex. That's great.
No, we were just told
I get it. I'm just kidding.
Ultrasound technician.
Yes.
But,
some people don't want to know. That's why.
What I have viewed through experience was watching, definitely, especially when you get into these rep hockey leagues, you definitely saw parents around who were expecting their kids to, be ultra successful, probably go to the NHL. And I know on several occasions, the commissioner or whatever of our league said, I'm just going to let everybody in this room know right now, nobody's kid is going to the NHL. Okay? And he just set the tone. And I guarantee there were people in that room that said, no, that's not true. My son will go. My son will. I know that there would have been people in that room that said, no, mine will. And, if you look statistically at this, I think there was a statistic that showed in 1972, I should have brought this in, and I didn't think we were going to get in this direction, but 1972, they did an analysis of all kids who were born in 1972, and they showed, I think it was 10,000 kids were playing hockey in Canada in 1972. In the first 3 years, 5,000 disappeared off the list. And then 10 years later, 3,000 disappeared off the list. And they just showed, and I think they determined 5 people made it to the NHL in the 10,000.
Right. It didn't have a statistically, it wasn't like a baby boom in terms of how many people, yeah.
They just showed us the staggering numbers of how few people get to this level.
It's like in January, everyone goes to health clubs, and then by February 15th, most people aren't there anymore. Or did you hear the same thing about how many people took up the art of archery after the Hunger Games? It's that kind of thing, right? And then it all dropped away.
Yeah.
But especially in a country like Canada, where the focus is so much on hockey. And yeah, to Clark's point, there is quite a difference between house league, which is just recreational, versus rep sports, where that's very much a competitive level. And to see it, I've seen it from friends who have kids in rep sports at how competitive and how vindictive and evil some of the parents can be, where they shut people out of their lives if they feel that their kid is a threat to their kid making the team, type of thing.
Yes.
It's incredible that the politics that goes on.
Well,
it really is quite eye-opening.
Paul, let me actually, let's to wrap this one up, maybe, because we've got a lot of other things in limited time. How many of us personally experienced our own things with our own fathers or own mothers and the pressure we personally had and what we did about anything? It doesn't have to be sports, but it could be sports. It could be theater sports, if that's a thing for you, or it could be violin, expanding it. Just that, were you ever forced into something, and were your parents specifically overzealous to any degree whatsoever?
Well, I think that kind of might lead into a bigger conversation that we can tackle for another podcast. But in my situation, it wasn't so much sports, but my parents kind of pressured me to join activities that my brother had been interested in. For example, Army cadets.
Right.
That was really the only time in my life that I felt that I was truly like pressured or pushed in a direction to say, this is what you will be doing. Was the fact that they wanted me to join Army cadets. And it wasn't, to make a long story short, it wasn't my cup of tea. I gave it about a year or so and ended up dropping out. But yeah, that was an instance where I felt there was some pressure from my parents. But otherwise, I was pretty lucky in the sense that they were pretty laid back. They really didn't push me or pressure me, or they let me do what I wanted to do. So I really can't complain.
Clark, you? What experience did you have, if any, that, because the topic was overzealousness, was that did your parents pressure you into, and we've limited it to sports, but it could be anything. It could be school. If you want to expand it past, because we can keep it to sports, and actually with the amount of time we have left, rather than make this the entire topic for this podcast, maybe we should limit it to sports and say, hey, great idea to explore this more on another one. But
I can answer it for both very quickly. So no, never any pressure to succeed in sports or anything of that nature. And that would go for academics as well. Yeah. They wanted me to do well, but never a push to be, an A student, or, maybe they'd like that, but never a push on either count.
And do you think that is good, bad, or indifferent, or just the way it is?
I think it's good. Okay. Because I had enough of my own passion for baseball that I wouldn't have needed to be pushed, or my father to be overzealous, so to speak. Would I have loved to have had the opportunity to get more that probably wasn't so much available then as it is now, like going to winter camps and winter baseball facilities that really didn't exist back then? But no, never any pressure by him at any time. Okay.
And I'm sort of the same. Just to finish the topic off on a final note, although, Paul, you'll have the last word, I guess. I was not pressured. I do understand, though, parents keeping kids. I don't have kids, but my illusion of how I would be if I had kids would be that sometimes those kids are going to waver from something. And you're like, no, if you have devoted a certain amount of time to this, unless they can explain that they hate it, you have to sort of try and separate the wheat from the chaff in terms of, are they just lazy at this moment? Like piano. Like, you've invested a lot of time. You're not throwing that away. You're going to continue this as if it's like going to school and finish this skill because you've already started it thus far. But if the kid is lucid enough to communicate, I hate doing this, Dad, I hate, or Mom, then maybe, of course, to give them the flexibility. But, to not let them off easy just because something gets hard. I remember hockey got really hard for me when I was what turned about 11 or 12. Kids started to get really mean, and it wasn't fun anymore. And I gave up after it wasn't fun. But if I had been pushed through, would I have been better? I was very good in my league, but it seems like everyone has that story. I was the top scorer in my league. Well, whatever. But, maybe if they pushed me through, I would have been something more. But I left when it was not fun. And that's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. It just has repercussions, is the way I see it. So, anyway.
Paul, anything we didn't cover? We got 1 minute on this.
Yeah, I think we'll just close off by saying that for me personally, I'm glad that I wasn't pressured throughout my life. And I, as a parent now, I very much lead that same manner in the sense that now that my own child is in sports, I try not to pressure him either. So I think maybe it's one of those things where it's all in what you're used to. If some people are used to that life and are used to being pressured and feel that it's a good thing, then that might be something that they carry down to their own kids.
Yeah.
But it sounds like for the three of us, I think our attitude is more of a laid back approach, and people should have the freedom and the ability to make their own decisions and decide for themselves as to what they want to do.
If I was to summarize it in one sentence, it would be this. You can do anything you want, but you can't do everything you want. So if you want to be the best in the world at something, you got to give up everything else. And if a parent can't communicate that to their child, then they're doing them a disservice, because then they might get to adults and realize they've missed everything else.
This episode is brought to you by Pace Painting. Pace Painting, serving all your painting needs, whether commercial or residential. Reach Pace Painting at paintwithpace@gmail.com or via their Facebook page, Pace Painting Inc. Or call Peter at 289-356-7744. Paint with Pace. Our next topic, childhood idols. This topic comes from one of our listeners, Andrew. He's a new listener, and he proposed a few things that I'd love to get to, but one in particular was about childhood idols, childhood heroes, meeting your childhood idols. Did you get a chance to meet them? And if so, what sort of experience did you have?
Yeah.
Was it underwhelming? Was it what you thought it would be? Paul, why don't you start?
Well, I'll start by saying that although sort of had childhood idols, but I wasn't overly passionate about if there was any one individual that I had to meet, or someone that I had a crush on, or someone that, by all means that was something I had to meet this person. I didn't really have that feeling, especially not as a younger person, I suppose. So I can't really speak of the fact that I haven't really met any of my idols. I have met, in terms of famous people, some have been athletes. As you know, I'm a huge Toronto Blue Jays fan, and I've had the opportunity to be able to meet some former players, both past and present. And a lot has been said about when people meet celebrities, oh, that guy was a jerk or something like that. And it's, I guess one has to look at the context in which those individuals, in which you meet those individuals, in the sense that maybe you meet them in passing. You have to take into account that maybe they were having a bad day or something like that, or the venue in which you meet them. Having just like a 10-second interaction, is that fair to pass judgment on a person by just having that very small exchange with them? So the reason I bring that point up is because in doing a little bit of research on this topic, I came across some good quotes. And there's the famous quote about you should never meet your heroes, alluding to the fact that you could be very disappointed when you meet the person that you have this idolism, or this person that you have put on a pedestal. There's another great quote: you should never touch your idols. A little of the gold always rubs off. I always thought that was a great one. I guess,
and not on you.
Well, yeah, because it's depending on who your idols are, whether they're sports athletes or Hollywood celebrities, and I'm sure Mike will talk about that in a moment. Whoever they might be, if they're politicians, business people, you have a tendency to perhaps put these people on a pedestal or to think of them in a certain way, maybe their persona when they're on the camera, but when you meet them in person, they could be completely different from what you would expect them to be. So I haven't really had that experience myself of meeting someone that I really idolized, but came away feeling disappointed. But I'm interested to know about your guys' experiences, and especially you, Mike, considering the business that you're in.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me, mine's pretty quick.
Go
so
ahead,
I met
Clark.
Tony Fernandez, who was my idol growing up. Baseball player, shortstop for the Toronto Blue Jays, one of the best Blue Jays of all time. And I got an opportunity to meet him when I was probably 30. He was doing autograph signing on a Friday night Blue Jay game before the game started. And I remember being there and thinking, okay, there he is. I see him in person. I was very impressed with his physicality. This was 10 years after he had finished playing, maybe 15 years, but he was still such a strong looking man. And that was cool. I really like seeing the physical players like that, especially even when we were watching them when we were younger, seeing them walking out of their cars and into the stadium was always really amazing to me. So for him, I'm getting closer and closer in the line, and I'm thinking, what am I going to say to the guy? Like, I had bought a couple of baseball cards, Tony Fernandez baseball cards. I'd gone to a memorabilia shop that afternoon and brought it there, and I had my little Sharpie pen or whatever, and I walked up to him. It was my turn, and my wife was with me at the time, and he was sitting there, and I passed the card over, and he was in mode, that kind of robotic, he's signing mode, right? Like, just he gets the card, looks up, says hello, signs it, move on to the next guy. And so I'm thinking, what am I going to say to this guy? Am I going to say anything to this guy? And so I said what was really the truth, which was, I gave him the card and I said, it's great to meet you. I grew up copying and imitating the way you would throw the ball to first base. Like I just in the schoolyard, when I played in regular, I was you. I wanted to be you. I emulated, and physically what you looked like really influenced my style of play. How soft he was, like so soft with his hands. And so that's what I said to him. And he was like, oh, okay. And then he signed, and then it was like, next. So it was a little bit disappointing in a way. Like, I don't know what I expected him to really say. I don't think I really expected him to say anything, but that was probably, as far as an idol, absolutely idolized that guy. And I was so glad I got to meet him. Unfortunately, he passed away last year at a young age, 58, I think he was, which was quite sad. But that's really my experience with.
And it's interesting how you raised the point about it. Well, what I said before about how you have that 5 or 10 second interaction with that player or whoever it might be, if you're asking for an autograph or a selfie. And you wonder, even in that 5 or 10 seconds, that person can still make a difference. And I use the example where, again, going back to the Blue Jays, I guess it was 2 years ago, we went to the Jays Winterfest, which is an opportunity where you get to meet past and current players. And some of the players that we had an opportunity to take a picture with was Roberto Alomar and Pat Borders, who were key players from the 1992-93 Blue Jays World Championship. And my wife had gone up to Pat Borders and said, wow, well, something to the effect of, I was a really big fan of yours, and I really enjoyed watching you play when I was a kid, and it's great to see you. And his reaction was genuine when he said, oh, thank you very much. Just the way in which he shook her hand. It really caught, my wife commented that it really made a point with her, in the sense that his reaction was truly genuine. Like he truly cared about the comments that my wife had provided to him. And as a player, 15, 20 years later, to that particular person, that meant a lot. Whereas
and I think he'd probably been told that about 150 times before she actually walked up. So he didn't treat it like, yeah, I hear that all the time. Thanks.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a genuine response. Whereas a lot of players would have been, oh yeah, thanks, whatever. Or just, okay, and kind of moved on. And yeah, it's tough when it's like you're in an assembly line of collecting autographs and you have that, it's like the elevator speech. You have that 5 or 10 seconds to say something or to make an impression on someone that you had watched as a kid or someone that you had admired. So it is interesting how that even that 5 or 10 second experience or that interaction can still, there's still opportunities for that person to make an impression on you.
Yeah. How about you, Mike? And not so much celebrities as much as childhood heroes.
Yeah, no, I get that. I'm going to, I'll mention that this topic could be a 5, 6, 7 hour topic for me alone. I do, if someone's a new listener or has not heard my old episodes, I work in the film industry, special effects on set. And so I've had many opportunities to work with famous people that most people would know in the TV and television industries, and film. So I've had quite some weird, I'm not going to go into everything. I did want to, before I even mentioned it, I sort of wanted to touch on one of the quotes that he brought up about never meet your heroes. And, that's never resonated for me, that quote, because what I realize is never meet the person you have in your mind and compare them to the person you're going to meet in real life, because they're two different people and you don't really know them, is the way I always thought of it. So it's, in other words, if I don't go there with expectation, which is exactly what you said, Clark, I don't know what I was expecting. When you approach them with no expectation, how can they disappoint me? Because I realized that the printed word on that book, or the way I see them play the game, or the way I see them act as a character, that is not them. So
yeah, that's a great point.
And for me, I'll give you a perfect example. I started reading, Stephen King at a very young age. And wow, I mean, I absorbed so much of his stuff, both books, audiobooks, magazines, movies. I pretty much could tell you almost anything that he did and had read it before, and his interactivity with just the entertainment industry up until maybe 2000. And then after that, I slowed down because just of work was getting much more pressing. Well, on It Chapter 2, which I worked on from beginning to end, I sat 5 to 6 feet away from Stephen King for almost a day while making smoke in a room while he was doing his scene. He's got a cameo in that movie, and I was there that entire time. And I realized, while I know so much about him, I feel like I know him, but he knows nothing about me, except that he can relate in that the experience we were having at that moment, and that I work in the film industry, obviously, and finally that that I obviously like his work, so he can bring up questions about things that I've observed through his work. Other than that, I have no expectation. So I sat there the entire day without talking to him. And at the very end of the day, he turned and looked at me, and he saw that I was on a smoke machine, and I know that he's been a director and been on set a few times. So he said, try and do my best Stephen King impression here, which is not that great, but he'll go, when I, back in the day, a long time ago, that stuff really smelled like shit. And he shook his head, like looking down at the floor. And then he looked back at me and says, "Strange world we live in, eh?" Like something like that. I was thinking that's such a Stephen King thing to say, because it is weird. I could have said, "Stephen, I feel like you're my uncle, for Christ's sake. I've known you for so long. I've heard your voice. I know your interactions. I know your personal history." But I didn't say any of that. I just said, it certainly is. And I've been in the industry for 30 years. And you're right. It did smell like a lot of shit. And it's come a long way since then, because his observation was it did smell like shit and it didn't today. So just cool. Because I don't approach them with expectations.
Yeah, Mike, people, I think that's a great comment, that how you remove that expectation aspect of it, which I don't think many people would.
I know. Especially if they're a hero, if they're a hero.
Yeah, so I have a question for you, Mike. Okay, so Stephen King, if he was one of your childhood idols, was there any part of you that wanted to go to Stephen King and say, "Hey, I'm a huge fan of yours. I love your work"? Were you prompted to do that, or
I would have put it this way: if he had said, "Well, Mike, it's pleased to meet you. My name's Steven," and I would have said, "Well, Mr. King, yes, I know you well. I've been a long admirer of your work." Oh, and if he started to go on and involve me in a conversation, I probably would have. However, for example, I do take over conversations even with famous people and talk over them. So I'm trying to pull myself back from that. Woody Harrelson, I basically met when I was working in Bangkok. And then someone said, "Hey, did you know that basically Woody got hello in 2 words and then you talked for 20 minutes and Woody Harrelson didn't get to say anything?" I'm like, actually, it's the 3rd time I've worked with him. So it's not like he remembers me, but there was the connection of our shared experience that we talked about briefly. And I'm like, yeah, I did that. It's pretty dumb.
The other thing too, Mike, so Mike's working with these guys in a work capacity.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's also important to note.
So it has to be professional. In a non-work capacity, maybe there's only a couple people I've ever met. I met Adam West, Batman, at a convention. And he was. I loved Batman right from being a kid, and it took me, I don't know. It took me about probably 10 years to figure out that it was supposed to be a joke. I took it so seriously. It's only when you're old. Seriously? Well, Batman, when I was a kid, 1966, Adam West, Burt Ward, Batman. And only when I was about 16 or 17 did I realize, hey, wait a second. This is a farce. This is supposed to be funny. I took it completely seriously as a kid. So I didn't see it's meant to be ridiculous. It was actually probably designed for adults more than kids. And as a kid, I just took it like, this is this world. So I finally got to meet him at a comic book convention. I think it was the first comic book convention that became what is now the Toronto Comic Con. I think that was around 96. And when he was there, he signed a picture for me of where he's doing Bat2C on the Time Life magazine. And he says, and I said, "Sir, it's an honor to meet you, and if it would mean a lot to me to get you to sign this." And of course I'll do that. What's your name, son? And I said, "Well, it's Mike, sir." Oh, here you go, Mike. A funny thing, Mike. They're making that Batman movie, as you know. The Batman movie was coming out, the Tim Burton. So it wasn't 96. I guess it was earlier. He said, "Do you know what they said, Mike?" Or it could have been. Tracing it back, whenever he was in Toronto, there was a Batman movie coming out in theaters. And he said, "You know what they did? They sent me this cease and desist order not to wear my Batman costume or be Batman because, well, that's getting in the way of what they want the marketing to be, I suppose."
Because of he was participating in a very he says, comical, what do you think farcical way.
Yeah. What do you think? Well, he wasn't dressed as Batman at that point. And he said,
"Were you?"
No, but he says, "What do you think about that, Mike?" And I can't quote him, but it was something like, "Well, I think that's a pile of shit," right? And I was like, "Me too, sir. You're the real Batman here, so you be Batman whenever you want to be. You've earned it." And he goes, "Well, thank you very much." And he signs it to me beautifully, and it's a picture I still have.
That's a great response.
And then this is the best part. Halfway through, I'm just wandering the floor looking around, and I look over, and there he is in full Batman regalia, walking around, shaking people's hand, taking pictures as Batman, almost like to say physically, "Fuck you, Warner Brothers. I'm Batman. I'll dress as Batman if I want." And there was no hiding it. He was walking around proudly like a peacock, and God, I love that moment. It's a great
so
memory.
He had a uniform somewhere in a trunk?
I guess so. But that he told me that. I guess he might have told other people in the line too. But, maybe he was saying it to each person who came up. "What do you think about that? What do you look? Check this out. Can you believe that?" And then it was like just presented himself like, but
yeah, 12 people have said that I should do it. So God damn it, I'm doing it.
So God, that's a cherished memory. And so far, none of the people that I've thought of as heroes that I've met, Steve Bisette, who is the one of the artists on Swamp Thing, the comic, was another I met. These. Clive Barker I've met, none of them had disappointed me because, like I said, I never came into it with expectation, and they ended up being more than I hoped they could be, actually. So there's my short answer. And 10 podcasts worth of information to go deeper on that, should you guys ever want to.
Well, hey, maybe we will revisit this topic
Yeah, for
because
sure.
those were some interesting stories, Mike. I'd definitely be interested in hearing more, and I think the listeners would as well. So,
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'd just end off by saying there's another great quote. It says, "Whoever said to never meet your heroes obviously had the wrong ones." So,
Well,
maybe that leads into the fact that if you don't put these people on a pedestal, then you don't set yourself up for disappointment.
Yeah, it's been paraphrased so many times too, but it's essentially that if you have a vision in your head, I remember one of the quotes that I remember hearing in reference to that was someone met H.G. Wells, and when he met him, he was a frail old man, and he had this vision of this, the vivacious books and the thoughts and the energy and the concepts, and then here's this person. I don't remember if it was the frailness to do with his physicality or to do with his concepts and the way he was in person. But it's not fair. I mean, someone gets to think of a book over years and years and years, and then you're judging them like only someone like this could make that. And then you meet them and it's, well, oh, they're not that. You know, some people are surprised when they hear that, say, the author of Ender's Game is very right wing. And they're like, well, I love that book. How can he be right wing? That conflicts with the way I think. So there's a trap there. It's all in the expectation. You drop expectation, I find you won't be disappointed.
our segment, What We're Watching, was a chance for us to talk about different shows that we are watching or a movie. And I'll share mine. Paul, this was actually one of the ones that you suggested, Yellowstone, Kevin Costner series. My wife and I started watching it about 2 weeks ago, and we just finished season 1 yesterday. So thank you for the recommendation. Enjoying it very much and looking forward to watching subsequent episodes. I would only say that for those that, my reactions to it, beautiful scenery, fantastic acting. It takes place in Montana, and it kind of reminds me almost of a Sons of Anarchy cowboy edition, which it's probably not being fair to say that, but there's definitely this sort of mob element to it of organized crime, and these guys are bad guys, but they're good guys, but kind of bad guys. And I will say the thing that surprises me, it seems like somebody dies at least every episode. 1 or 2 people die or meet some violent circumstance. So I would say that was a little bit surprising. I wasn't expecting that.
That's good, though.
I'm glad you're enjoying this series, and season 1 is excellent. Season 2 is even better. Like it's a series that just keeps getting better and better as it goes along. Definitely stick with it.
What's the premise of the show? Like, I don't really know it that well. I mean, you've sort of skimmed over it there, but can you give it? Yeah,
so Kevin Costner plays this John Dutton, or I forget his first name.
Dutton. Yep.
John Dutton. He's a cattle rancher. A really important landowner.
Yeah.
It's all about the resistance of dealing with external forces that are trying to encroach and take over a lot of the land in Montana and build like commercial buildings or build housing developments. And it's the whole clash between old school Kevin Costner cattle rancher, part of this like massively strong, important family in the area, the Duttons.
Yeah.
And so it's a clash between that, and it's got a little bit of a, like I said, soprano-ish nature to it, where Paul.
I was going to say, it's interesting that you mentioned Sons of Anarchy, because there actually is a connection there. The creator of the show, Taylor Sheridan, he actually starred in Sons of Anarchy. He was in the first couple of seasons as one of the town sheriffs.
Okay,
cool.
So there's definitely there's a connection there for sure.
You know, it's interesting too. I'm not pulling us back to this topic, but it would be an interesting connection maybe for a future episode. You talk about a family lineage of cattle ranching. What if you want to be a golfer all of a sudden? Like, in a way, it's the same thing. Like, no, sorry, son. You're raising cattle. It's our lineage. So that topic, just to go back to it for a second, but not to go back to it. It's pervasive in family expectations, and sometimes it's the right thing and sometimes it's the wrong thing. So anyway, back to the show.
It's certainly pervasive in Yellowstone. If you watch it, then yes,
Yeah.
that's a reoccurring theme. For sure it is.
Nice. Oh, it's on my list. I'll put it down there, and I've got a slot in 195 on the next to watch list, so I'll put it down.
There you go.
But yeah, it's what am I watching right now? My wife is being extremely generous and patient with me to go back and basically rewatch Ozark so that I can catch up and get to basically the end or wherever it is currently right now, the end, the cutting edge of it. I'm in like episode 2 of season 2. So I'm way the hell back there. Because of my job, my job in film is very time, demanding, and trying to fit life, friends, TV, and everything into that, you have to be very organized. And have been classically is the wrong word. I have been in the past not very organized, but I hope to change that. I'm actually making a very diligent effort to rearrange priorities and add in these things that bring zest to life, including watching shows with friends and family and that kind of thing. So Ozark, that's where I am. Jason Bateman, I was about to say effing incredible, but he is. I love watching
Jason
him.
Bateman.
He is one of the best performers I've watched over time, even way back from what was the family show that he was on with his
Hogan Family.
But what was that show called? It eludes me for a split second, and I don't.
Well, there was the Hogan Family. There was Silver Spoons.
Silver
He was
Spoons.
in that.
Yeah.
He was also in his own show called It's Your Move, which I think lasted one season.
Who was Ricky Schroeder? What was that show?
That's Silver Spoons.
That was Silver Spoons.
You mean Jason Bateman was in Silver Spoons as well?
Yeah, he was like a secondary character in that.
But what was the show where he was? They all merged together after a while. Not Mike Seaver, but he was the other kid. Didn't he have a family where he was like the son in a family TV show?
Well, yeah, Hogan Family, but there was other names
what was it
for that,
called?
I think.
Yeah, it wasn't a Hogan Family.
Hogan Family. God damn it!
No, don't believe you. It was called the Hogan.
Well,
the show was
it
called
sure
Hogan.
was. The Hogan Family is an American sitcom series that began airing in 1986, finishing its run in 91 for a total of 6 seasons. The Hogan Family.
Really? How did I know that show, but yet I never knew the title? Anyway, that alludes. My brain is a weird thing sometimes. Anyway, Jason Bateman, awesome, and great show. Every episode draws me further into it. It's very complex. It's very well acted, and some characters scare the crap out of me, and some are just like I understand how they can keep getting mired into crazier circumstances, but like they're real characters. They're fleshed out, and I'm interested to watch more.
Yeah, I loved Ozark myself. It is such a great series, and you said you're on season 2, I believe, but season 3 is amazing. Like it just keeps, it's one of those shows that keeps getting better and better. And you will love season 3. It's so action packed. And it ties a lot of stuff together.
A very quick point. I've also, I'm usually about 15 years behind the curve on anything. I finally bought a 3D TV. And so I'm collecting 3D movies and accumulating a few of them, and then I'm going to get a second pair and maybe a third pair of glasses, and then start to do that. I've tested it; it looks really interesting, and I can't wait to experience that. So it's too bad now that that's sort of a dead thing. They're still making 3D movies for release, but they have sort of slowed down on the push of that. Now I guess they've accepted that it's not going to be widely adopted. So the heyday of that seems to be in the rear view mirror.
Okay, Paul, finish up. What are you watching?
Yeah, so the show that I wouldn't say I'm watching currently, but I have watched quite religiously was The Crown. And it's only fitting that I wanted to mention the Crown for today's episode because most recent news event was the passing of Prince Philip. And obviously, the Crown, for those who may not have watched this series, it's 4 seasons, and it follows the storyline of the royal family from about 1947 all the way up to, I think so far they're at about late 1980s. Season 5 and 6 are coming out soon. But anyway, it's one of those things that got me to thinking, because the show does a really great job of bringing out the personalities of certain members of the royal family. Certainly Philip was one that had quite a few storylines attached to him. And although it is a fictional show, one has to think that there is definitely some connections, or it is certainly a well-researched and good quality show that I don't think they would deviate too far from the truth. But in any event, it's...
apparently season 3 is very, very much... it would be, of all the seasons, apparently it's the one they deviate the most.
Yeah, I'm sure they have taken some liberties, which
they have to, right?
Yeah,
How do they know
have to for entertainment purposes. But
and also because they just truly don't know. They've never been able to sit the Queen down and say, "Here, tell us what happened." She's probably said she's never talked to anyone. Nobody in the family would have ever talked to them, I'm sure.
But it's interesting
That's when you get
how
butlers and servants and drivers that have probably contributed to some of it.
Yeah, but it's interesting how I think the Crown has almost resurrected some of the interest in the popularity of the royal family. There's been a lot of outpouring of grief over Philip's passing, and I think a lot of that is shows like The Crown have reintroduced the royal family to perhaps some of the younger generations, and for younger people to have an appreciation for the work and the incredible responsibility and the sacrifices that the Queen and Prince Philip have made over their careers as members of the royal family that have been lifelong. In the case of Prince Philip, he married into the royal family almost 80 years ago. So it really is an opportunity to kind of appreciate the work that the royal family does, because they really do a lot for not only Great Britain, but for a lot of other great causes and throughout the world. So yeah, it's I recommend the show in terms of it's a good quality show, extremely well acted. But as I said, I just thought it was appropriate to mention it to signify the passing of, in my opinion, a person that I had a lot of respect for was Prince Philip.
Yeah, I wanted to share one personal thing on that. On Friday, we were supposed to have a presentation by our CEO. So I work for a British company, and we were supposed to have a presentation at 9:30. I don't think it was anything super formal. Like, it wasn't like end of year results or anything, but at around 6 a.m., I saw there was an email that said that due to the passing of Prince Philip, we will be canceling the meeting from this morning.
Yes.
For this morning. And I was actually quite surprised by that. I don't know why. I mean, it is a British company, but to me, I thought that was a bit odd that they would cancel our president speaking to us about business topics because Prince Philip died. And I realized, well, it's serious business in the UK when the member of royalty passes away.
I don't think Paul, are your parents British?
Yes.
Like, born there?
Well, yeah, my mom is born in England. So
you probably, of the
sure.
three of us, have the best connection to understanding the importance of it. And then through Carolyn, who's European, she's German, I do understand that people from Europe, especially Great Britain, will have a different view of royalty than Canadians possibly could, unless they have lineage that's come from there and has really influenced their family here.
Yeah, I just want to finish up just some of the things that I noticed that they're doing as far as mourning. All the BBC hosts apparently are wearing dark, like almost funereal clothing, so black suits and black ties. Of course, they're doing, obviously all the masts are being flown at half-mast, and a lot of programming on the TV and regular programming has been rescheduled or changed due to this. And one thing in my business, I'm in the insurance business, that they have said that expecting a major impact on the day-to-day in Britain or London will be when Queen Elizabeth passes. That it will be a a shutdown of business, probably somewhere up to a full week, which will have an economic impact on the economy.
Yeah, there's that goes without a moment of doubt that will be the case. And I'm not surprised that this had this effect either. I mean, Carolyn's had a lot of little vignettes to observe and relate to me about it, and they've been around for our parents' entire lives, right? So both of them, it's huge. In one sense.
Yeah, you think about that. So. Queen Elizabeth has been alive for our entire lifetime, and in fact, probably our parents' entire lifetime.
Not probably, for sure. There's they were.
That's true. My dad is not 95.
Yeah.
Good point. Good point.
Okay. Anyway, so well, whatever God you believe in, may He bless him and accept him up there, and rest in peace, Philip. I guess in Canada he was. There's probably some relation to how he rules over us, or was. Because Canada isn't, our prime minister is not the head of state. That's I'd love to have someone on here who's really politically savvy on the Canadian system to explain, is it the Queen, our head of state, and their representative in Canada is the Governor General?
The Governor General, yeah, that's right.
So, I mean, indirectly, there's the grandfather. The once removed great grandfather of Canada just died too. So anyway, all the best to his family, and our condolences from Canada.
Oh, I want to take an opportunity just to remind people about our Facebook page and our email. If you want to get in touch with us, you are welcome to email us at wetalkedaboutthis99@gmail.com, or visit our website at wetalkedabouthis.net. You can find all our episodes there, as well as some information about us. Visit our Facebook page for some pictures, and also a great way to interact. It is a private Facebook page, but send me a note if you'd like to be a member of that page. Always happy to hear from you. Topic ideas, suggestions, comments, please send them our way. Gentlemen, as always, when we get together, we fill up lots of time. And it was a pleasure to have you guys on, and I'm sure we will again get together sometime soon.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me today, guys. I appreciate it.
Yep, always a pleasure. This was fun.
Blah, 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 blah. Edit this out. Join the meeting. And this is Mike talking at a point where Clark will edit out to connect with the ongoing part of Zoom, unless he keeps it in. So while we're waiting for him, we're going to do some impressions of Jack Lafontaine. No, Jack, what's his name? Don Lafontaine. All right, join a meeting. Here we go. Join with video.